Hello, so welcome to my semi-permanent lash training practice session. So this session is for beginners who are working on their training heads and want to further their skills before they go and work on a live model. So before we start, a little bit about me. I'm Sabrina. I'm the owner of the Lash and Beauty Academy, and I've been a qualified trainer since 2017 when I did my AET qualification to be a tutor or a trainer. I'm a qualified lash artist. I trained with Novu in 2014, and I do a range of styles such as your classics, your Russian, your hybrid, and it's what I mainly do in my salon, as well as lash lifts and brow laminations. Those are my most popular treatments that I do. I'm also an MVQ level 3 beauty therapist, so I went straight to college from school when I was 16. And where it says worked in salons and spas for over 19 years, it's actually more like 21 now. I made this presentation, this base, about 2 years ago at the start of the COVID pandemic. So I probably need to update that, but yes, it's been 21 years of being in the beauty industry, doing treatments on clients on a regular basis. So what we're going to cover today is equipment needed for this session, just to make sure that you've got everything that you need to be able to complete this, how to pick up your extension correctly, because there's lots of wrong ways and only one correct way. Know your adhesive and how to use it. That is super duper important. We're going to go in depth in that. 2 techniques to isolate a natural lash. I would say that students mostly struggle with isolation. Out of all the steps they've got to do, that's the bit they struggle with when they come to work on a live model. So if you can nail it on your mannequin, it's a lot easier when you come to work on a real person. Application of the extensions, applying your extension at the correct angle. There's a lot of new lash tech mistakes with the angles, so I'm going to show you that perfect angle. Mind the gap. That's all about making sure we don't apply those extensions to the skin and that we're applying them the correct distance from the lid. And last but not least, the banana peel technique. So that's something that you will do when you're doing an infill and you want to peel off the old extension that has grown out and you want to replace it with a fresh one. Or if you're doing a full set and for some reason, you're not happy with the way that an extension was applied and you need it off. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first of all, equipment needed for the session. So you need your lash extensions, ideally 0.15 thickness, no thicker than that, because then they get too heavy for the natural lash to handle and you end up with premature lash loss. Lash extension adhesive, ideally for a new lash tech, either 1 to 2 seconds as the fastest or 2 to 3 seconds. Anything slower than 2 to 3 seconds, I find you get a bit frustrated with the speed. The extensions just drop off. Anything less than 1 to 2 seconds, it's too fast, and you'll find that you just don't have enough time to go from dipping your adhesive to applying it on the natural lash because you're too slow when you're new. So 2 to 3 seconds probably is the best. 1 to 2 seconds at a push if you're a bit faster. A straight pair of tweezers and a curved pair of tweezers. However, I personally always work with 2 curved pairs, and I have a straight pair for just when I'm doing the inner corners, or if I'm working on someone with very curly lashes. So my kit always has 2 pairs of curved and a straight, but you can, if you just have a straight pair and a curved pair in your kit, that's absolutely fine. You can still definitely work with that, no problem. Disposable mascara brush. You want a fresh one for every client. That's why they're disposable. We don't reuse those. Jade stone or glue ring. Glue rings come with a lot of issues because the adhesive is so close to your face. A lot of lash techs find that they start to get allergies to the fumes, the cyanacrylate fumes, because it's too close to your face. You're breathing them straight in. The fumes are going straight in your eyes. And there's also the risk of, if the glue ring comes loose and falls onto the client's face, then covered in adhesive. And I have seen that on lash groups before, people asking for help, saying, oh my God, I've spilled glue all over my client's face. It's just not worth the risk. A jade stone is much safer and much lower risk of giving you allergies and causing problems for the client. Micropore tape, I tend to use that instead of under eye pads. If you don't have, sorry, that I'm getting mixed up. Microfoam tape is the one I use instead of under eye pads. That's what it says, optional. You can use under eye pads instead. Micropore tape is the thinner one that comes in about this wide. And you use it for things like sticking down any extra lashes that haven't tucked into your under eye pad, and for pulling the skin tight for when somebody's got a hooded eye like myself, or if you need to just get the eyes into a certain position. Then you've also got your training doll head and your training strip lashes. If you haven't got a training doll head, you can use the side of a banana, because the curve of the banana, when you stick your strip lashes to them, it curves them. So that's an option that you can work on. You can also get practice trays from like Lash Base, where you stick your strips into it and it's in the shape of an eye, and it's a lot cheaper than getting a doll head. Personally, I would say get a doll head if you can afford it, because it just gives you a more realistic experience and makes the application so much easier compared to other options. The one thing that's not on here that I would say is worth getting is your primer, because the strip lashes that you practice on are made of plastic, and the extensions tend to slide off them. So if you've got primer, apply that to your strip before you actually work on them, and it will increase the grip by 10 times. It's just so much better. And then when you come to work on models, you'll have that there to work on your models. It will increase retention massively. So next up, we've got how to pick up an extension correctly. So I've just done a little diagram here, just to show the correct way. So you can see, if I use my pen as an example, so imagine this is the tip of the tweezer. The tip of the tweezer is coming straight on to the extension. We're not at an angle this way, and we're not at an angle this way. If you try and pick up at one of these angles, you find that the extension's a bit wonky in your tweezer, and it's really hard to get it to apply in a nice uniform way. And you end up having to twist your wrist into weird positions to be able to get it to actually do what it's supposed to do. So when you pick up your extension, you're coming from the side like this. Okay, so let's have a practice. I'm going to show you how that's done. So in this demonstration, I'm using a C-curl 0.15 thickness extension. I've got sizes 7 through to 13. You can see there I've picked up a size 12. Generally, the longer the extension, the easier it is to pick up because there's more to grab, but you will need to be able to pick up shorter extensions too, so make sure you practice with those as well. Now, the main thing to notice here, as I'm picking up, I am grabbing the extension towards the tip. I'm not picking up any lower than halfway down the extension. This is because when we go to dip our extension, if we grab too low, we end up dipping our tweezer into the adhesive as well. And when that happens, you can't let go of your extension. It all gets glued together, it gets into a real mess. So make sure you grab your extension towards the tip and pull off towards your face, not your chest and not backwards. Pull off towards your face. That is the correct angle to grab and pull. Have a watch of me doing a size 9 there. I'm pulling, I'm not pulling towards my chest, and I'm not going backwards. So now you've had a practice with your pickup, it's time to move on to the adhesive. Know your adhesive and how to use it. Super duper important. So adhesive dry time, how fast will it set, not cure? There's a big difference between the time it takes to set from, the extension being applied and for it to stick and stay, and for it to actually cure properly so that it's solidly on there and not releasing any kind of cyanacrylate fumes. So I'm sure many of you will have heard, your lash tech say to you, don't get your lashes wet for 48 hours because it'll affect the retention. And that's because it takes up to 48 hours for the extension adhesive to cure. Curing is a process for the liquid to turn into a solid, and it, you know, is not fully solid on the inside of that bond for up to 48 hours afterwards. The other bad thing about the cure time is that during that cure time, it's releasing fumes called cyanacrylate fumes. Cyanacrylate is one of the main ingredients in the adhesive, and if somebody has an allergic reaction to adhesive, it's usually the cyanacrylate that is the culprit. You can normally smell it. You get like a bit of a whiff of it when you're applying extensions or having extensions done. So during that first 48 hours, they are being exposed to the cyanacrylate fumes while the adhesive isn't fully cured. I actually use something called Flexi Bonder from Lash Base, or it's also known as Super Bonder, which can be bought from elsewhere, and that cures your adhesive from the inside out within 30 minutes instead of 48 hours. It also immediately seals in the fumes at the end of the treatment. And I have found in the last sort of 3 years that I've been using it, I haven't had a single allergic reaction. Before that came on the market, I did find that every now and then a client would end up flaring up, and that would be it. They would not be allowed to have extensions anymore, because once you're allergic to the cyanacrylate, you can never have extensions again, unless at some point manufacturers find a way to create an adhesive without that ingredient. And then people always ask me about sensitive adhesive. Well, can they not have sensitive adhesive? The problem with sensitive adhesive is that there's less cyanacrylate in it. So yes, it's less fumey, less likely to cause a reaction. However, the cyanacrylate is what makes it strong. So less cyanacrylate means less strength, which means the extensions drop off within a week. You know, that's no good to anyone. You're paying all this money for a service and they're dropping off. I go, you know, full strength adhesive every single time, make sure the client's eyes are closed throughout the treatment, and then finish with my Flexi Bonder or Super Bonder. And that works for me. So let's talk about humidity. Humidity is how much moisture is in the room, in the air. Too much humidity, the adhesive will cure, like set very, very quickly and be very brittle. The bond will be very brittle and they'll be premature. It'll just fall away from the extension and fall off prematurely. Not enough humidity in the room means that it cannot set. The adhesive needs moisture, humidity to be able to set. That's what it uses to set. And also, you know, warmth as well. Not too much, not too little. So I have something called a hygrometer, which tells me how much humidity is in the room and what the temperature is. So generally you want 55% humidity in the room and between 20 and 24 degrees Celsius. The minimum humidity for a lot of adhesives is 40% and the maximum is 70. So you want to get right in the middle of that 55. I find that once I get close to the 1470 ranges, I start to have a lot of issues. My sets start to take me longer. I get a lot of what you call brush offs, which is where you brush through the extensions and they drop off and you've just spent ages applying them and then half of them brush off. So you want to really manage your temperature and your humidity. In the winter, you want, you know, a radiator and a humidifier. Humidifiers push moisture into the air, about £50 from Argos. And then in the summer, I use aircon and a dehumidifier. Now, I know that an aircon machine is quite expensive. So what I used to do before I could afford my aircon was I used to just throw a window open. And I found that used to bring my humidity down in the summer when it was very humid. And just, you know, at the very least, you know, get a dehumidifier. So that's what we need for that. So I'm going to talk to you about picking up the right amount of adhesive. If you have too much adhesive, it's going to take ages to dry. Your set will take you 10 times as long because you're having to wait for every single one to dry for so much longer than it should do. And not only that, most people get impatient then because they're having to hold it for so long, so they let go and all the lashes stick together and you end up with one big nasty set of clogged together lashes that then need removing because they're going to damage that person's lashes and just be very uncomfortable. So we can see here we've got way too much in the top left corner. That's, you know, practically dripping off. The perfect amount here in the top right corner, it's a thin coating all the way along. There's no baubles and it's dipped about a third of the way up. You can go up to halfway up the extension. Don't dip too low. Don't just dip the very base. It is not enough. You will find that you cannot get those extensions to stick to the natural lash if you don't dip deep enough. You want to get good coverage without any baubles, but make sure you dip deep enough into the adhesive with your extension. Then another little diagram, we've got okay minimal issues, so we can see one little bauble at the end there, that's on the bottom left picture, and that's fine, you know, just a little bauble is acceptable. And then bottom right hand picture, we've got quite a few baubles of adhesive. That's a no-no really. Again, it's going to take longer to grab, longer to set, and you're going to have issues, and the set's generally either going to end up in a mess all stuck together, or it's going to take you much longer than it's supposed to. And you know, who wants to sit there for 3 hours doing a full set? You know, 2 hours max really for a full classic set for that, you know, a normal average set of lashes. You can do it in less if they're sparse. You might need slightly more time if they've got hundreds of lashes, but generally 2 hours, including consultation, you know, 15 minutes consultation, and then your 15 minutes of prep time as well is more than enough. So I'm going to show you now with a short video on how to dip. I want you to pause after you've watched the video and have a practice. So for this demonstration, I'm using a clear adhesive. I usually use a black adhesive on my clients, but for the demonstration, using the clear means you can see exactly how deep that I dip. So I'm dipping in about halfway up the length of my extension there, and you'll notice that I'm dipping, I'm not swiping. So I'm dipping the base in, don't swipe. That is the perfect amount of adhesive that you can see on that extension. You don't want to be seeing baubles of adhesive. You want it to just be a smooth, even spread of adhesive up to about 1/3, maximum halfway up the extension. So you can see there I'm dipping about halfway in, pulling out slowly. This is the key. You want to pull out slowly. If you pull out fast like I just did there, you can see there's loads of baubles of adhesive there. That is way too much adhesive. You want to dip in, not swipe. You want to dip in and then pull out slowly to get the correct amount of adhesive. Watch me do it one more time. So I'm going to do it too fast. That's the wrong way to do it, too much adhesive. The correct way to do it is to pull out slowly, and that is the perfect amount of adhesive. So now you've had a good practice with your dipping, we're going to have a look at 2 techniques on how to isolate a natural lash. So the reason there's 2 techniques is because the first one is to use 2 sets of tweezers. That's really good if somebody's got really tangled lashes or a lot of lashes to sift through, or if you're quite new and you're not quite there yet with being able to do it one-handed. The other technique is one-handed, which is great for if you hand make your own fans in the future. You know, you're doing rush and volume and you're hand making your fans, and you need to be able to make your fan on the back of your hand and then isolate. So I'll show you both of those. So watch the video and then have a practice, okay? So for the first technique, we're using a straight pair of tweezers and a curved pair of tweezers. The curved pair are our main isolation tweezers, and the straight pair we will be using for pickup of our extensions. So what you can see right here is what an isolated lash should look like. It's one natural lash completely on its own. No other lashes should be in that isolation area, and that is how you properly isolate a natural lash. So what I'm doing there is I'm using my straight pair of tweezers, which are my pickup tweezers, holding the lashes, the natural lashes, out of the way to one side of the natural lash that I want to isolate, and then I'm going in with my curved pair of tweezers to straddle that natural lash. So I'm holding those lashes out the way. I want that lash there that's next to the space, and I'm going to straddle the natural lash, and I'm going to take my tweezers over and then open them out. And you can see that my tweezer tips are touching the under-eye pad. You know, if you don't touch that under-eye pad, you will lose your isolation. So the way that I'm getting this isolation so pinpointed is with my tweezers. I'm squeezing the tip of my tweezers almost closed but not quite. So this is how I do it. Watch this. I'm squeezing so they're just about open. You can see they're about a millimetre open, and that way I can pinpoint the natural lash that I want to isolate. So this is what you do whether you're doing it one-handed technique or a two-handed technique. You're always going to squeeze those tweezers so that they're just about open, like that. And that way, when you go to select the lash that you want to isolate, it's very difficult for the other lashes that you don't want to get into your tweezers. And as I've mentioned before, the tweezer tips are touching the under eye pad, otherwise you'll lose that isolation. So squeeze and isolate. It really is just a case of practice. It's something that most beginners struggle with, so practice, 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 and remember to squeeze those tweezers. And now we're on to application of the extension. So this is where you put everything together. So you're going to be isolating, picking up your extension, dipping into your adhesive and placing onto the natural lash. For the application, we're also going to look at angles of application, because if you pick up at the wrong angle and you apply at the wrong angle, they simply won't stick and you'll just become very frustrated and say, I can't do this, when really you can. It's just about getting that technique right. So before we move on to the video, I want to show you what I mean by the correct angle. So the correct angle means that the bases of the extension and the natural lash come together nice and flush. So you can see here in this top picture, we've got 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter gap at the base. That's, you know, the distance we want from the lid. So we're not touching the skin, but also we're not applying so far out that it looks like it's grown out and it's been on for a week or two already. So that's the perfect distance. And then the bases here come flush together like two pieces of a puzzle. So the top, the extension's coming and it's sitting lovely at the base here. Not all the way, but just at the base. It's sticking together firmly so that we get really good retention. And there's no split end base. A split end base occurs when you apply at the wrong angle. So we've got the split end base here. We've got two examples of that, where the extension comes up like a ski slope above the base of the natural lash. And I have seen it on occasion as well, where students have accidentally applied it the opposite way and it's become quite dangerous because it goes beneath the wet line and it ends up stabbing into the wet line and onto the eyeball, and that's quite painful and can cause a lot of irritation and possibly infection. So we want to avoid that by making sure that our bases come together nice and flush like two pieces of a puzzle. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So looking at the doll from a side angle means you can see exactly what angle I am holding my extension at. I'm going to go in at the correct angle to start with. So when I say putting the extension onto the natural lash and them coming together like two pieces of a puzzle, this is what I mean. They should just come together, slot together nicely. This is angled too far forwards. It's like a ski slope. You can see the bases do not come together at all. And then if you were to hold your hand and your wrist too far back the other way, you would end up with a split end base the opposite way, with the point facing in towards the eyeball, which is just really, really dangerous. So when we do our extension application, we want to make sure that our wrists and our fingers are holding the tweezers at the correct angle so that the bases of the natural lash and the extension come together like this perfectly. There you go. So mind the gap. So this section is about making sure you leave that 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter gap. We've got a cross section of a hair here with the skin and the eyelash extension. And you can see here we've got this distance, 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter at the base. any closer, it's going to stab the eyelid, it's going to feel very uncomfortable, and your client will just want to rip them out. I don't know if you've ever had extensions done where it's just felt really itchy and stabby and pokey. That is what happens when the extension is applied too close. And then the other extreme to that is when it's applied too far away and you end up with such a big gap that it looks like it's been worn for a week or two already. A good comparison to think about is when you have your nails done. So, you know, when the nails are first done, they're right near the cuticle, you don't see a gap. You don't want it on the cuticle because it would lift, it would cause problems. Same with an extension. So in the correct position, it stays on really well, it looks really nice, and it should last, you know, 2 to 3 weeks before they start to look a bit scruffy as they grow out. But then as they grow out, you see that gap at the base, and it's exactly the same with the lashes, because lashes grow. They grow and then they drop out, they fall out, and then new baby ones grow through. Anagen, Cashin, Telogen. If you remember that from your theory, or if you haven't done theory, go and take my course because it explains everything. So this is something that that does take a bit of practice, you know, applying them uniformly so that they're all the same gap from the skin. But that is something that, you know, you will need to master to be, you know, a tip-top lash technician. So let's put all of the steps that we've learned today together. We're going to start off by isolating a natural lash. We're going to use the two-handed technique for that because that's easier. We're going to pick up an extension with our pick-up tweezer, and we're going to dip that extension into the adhesive and pull out slowly. And then we're going to place that extension onto the natural lash, making sure we leave a 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter gap at the base, which you can see right there at the bottom of the extension. Hold the isolation for a few seconds, let it set, then do it again. Don't do the natural lash directly next to the one you've just applied because they will stick together and you'll end up with a big sticky mess. Do one just a little bit further away or on the other eye. And then do the same process again. Isolate, pick up your extension, dip into the adhesive and pull out slowly, and then place onto the extension. What you can do as well is put primer onto the strip lashes before you do this process to help the extensions grab the natural lash better. Bearing in mind we're working on plastic strip lashes here. Have a practice. So the banana peel method, the banana peel technique. Every lash artist needs to be able to do this. It's an essential technique. It's a little bit scary to do it first because you are scared that you're going to tug on the natural lash and cause pain for the client. But the trick is to support that natural lash as you peel away. So imagine the extension is the peel on the banana and the natural lash is the banana. It's very much like if you were brushing long hair, like my hair. If I just went in with a hairbrush and dragged my brush down, it's going to drag at my roots and it's going to hurt. If I support my hair and I hold it in a pony and then brush the tail, it's going to support the roots. I'm not going to feel it. And that's the whole point when we do a banana peel. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So there's two ways to do a banana peel. The first one is to peel the extension from the tip. So you can see there I'm gripping the natural lash at the tip and I'm able to easily peel it away like as if you're peeling from the top of a banana. My tweezers aren't very grippy there, so make sure you've got some really grippy tweezers. You'll have a much easier time than I am having right now in this video. And as you can see, I'm just peeling them apart. The other method is from where you peel from the base. So there's no visible natural hair at the top of the extension. So turn the extension to the side, grip the natural lash at the very base as you do so, and create a split end base on purpose. And what this does is it means that you can grip the base of the extension and grip the base of the natural lash, support the natural lash, and peel that extension away. So that's what you do if you can't see the tip of the natural lash when you're doing a banana peel. So here's another one with no visible tip of the natural lash. So I'm going to turn the extension sideways. I'm gripping the natural lash while I do so to support it, and I'm peeling that extension away. And here's one where I can see the tip of the natural lash, so I grip the tip and I peel downwards instead of upwards. So that's the 2 ways to do a banana peel. So just to recap on our steps on how we do this treatment, we isolate the lash first, pick up the extension, dip the extension into the adhesive, apply the extension to the natural lash, hold the isolation for a moment, because if we let go too soon, the extension could flick off, or the other natural lashes or extensions around could just come in and stick to it because it's still wet. The slower your adhesive dry time is, the longer you will have to hold that isolation for. And then you want to release, slowly move away and move on to your next lash. I don't recommend applying lashes one after the other next to each other on the same eye, because they'll just end up sticking together. I personally like to work from eye to eye, so I'll do one on the left eye and then I'll do exactly the same on the right eye. And the reason I do this is because A, it gives that first one time to set and dry before I come back and apply the next one, and B, they're symmetrical. So by applying between the eyes at the same time, so left, right, left, right, left, right, every time I apply one on the left, I make it identical on the right hand side, and that's how I get that beautiful symmetry, as well as my mapping, of course. So that is your recap. So this is the order you're going to apply in. So let's just have a look. What do my students usually have the most trouble with? Question 1, why won't my extensions stick? They just keep falling off. This is a super duper common one. Number 1, you're not dipping into the adhesive deeply enough. And I don't mean picking up more. I mean, you need to actually dip your extension into the adhesive about 1/3 to about halfway up that extension. Okay. If you don't dip deep enough, you're not going to be able to get that stick. Also, the second reason is your angle. If you're applying your extension like this or like this, then of course it's not going to stick because it's got the tiniest bit of surface area to try and cling to. If you apply with the base of the extension flush with the base of the natural lash, they're going to come together like 2 pieces of a puzzle and they're going to grab. Okay, so you need to dip deep enough and you need to make sure your angle of application is correct. Question 2, I'm really struggling with isolating the natural lashes. Is there another way to do this? There is. You can take your micropore tape and you can take back the top layer, the upper layer of the natural lashes to reveal the bottom layer. And then, so you'd apply to your bottom layer, take that tape off and then apply to the top layer. There's loads of YouTube videos on how to do that. I personally don't bother with that method. I like to just work through the lashes in an orderly fashion from inner corner to outer corner. I very rarely use that method, to be honest, but if it's something you're interested in trying, then pop onto YouTube, type in lash isolation tape or lash isolation techniques, and you'll find loads of information pop up. Question 3, I'm scared of hurting my model. These tweezers are so sharp. Those tweezers are extremely sharp when they're new. So yes, you do have to be careful, but you have to remember you've got an under eye pad on there. They will not be able to feel the tips of those tweezers through the under eye pad. This is why we use an under eye pad or microfoam, not just micropore tape. It's not thick enough. And it's also horrible to remove. It's very painful when you remove it. And also they need to keep their eyes closed right through the treatment. They cannot just open when they feel like it. They'll end up, you don't want to poke them. And also you don't want an eyelash extension or fumes to go in there. So, it's perfectly safe as long as your client behaves and you've got under eye pads on. Question 4, I feel like I'm never going to get this. I always like to compare this, if anyone's learned to drive, I like to compare it to that, because on my first driving lesson, it was terrifying. I didn't understand how to go round the corner without ending up on the curb or ending up on the other side of the road, because I didn't understand how much to turn the wheel. I didn't understand about the clutch and the gears, and it was all very, very scary to me. And, I'm a very confident driver now. So it's all about practice. if you're going to let fear hold you back, oh God, I'm never going to do this, I'm going to hurt my client, what if I do something wrong, then you're never going to achieve anything. You have to push on through that fear, that discomfort. You have to come out of your comfort zone. You know, progress is not made in your comfort zone. You have to step out of that, and you have to persevere, and you have to practice. Practice, practice, practice. That's the most important thing. So you will get it. You just need to put that time in. If you really want it, you will find that time. No excuses. Now it's time for you to practice, practice, practice. So get your training head out. Once you feel confident on your training head, you can then move on to practicing on a model. I hope you found this helpful. And if you've got any questions, feel free to drop me an email at the lashandbeautyacademy@gmail.com. I'm just going to type that into here so you can see it, the Lash and Beauty Academy at gmail.com. And my name is Sabrina. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.